So before diving into today's training, we're going to start the day off with a great success story that we've had with one of our very special clients that we've been working with for a number of years, and really managing a very successful project over those years, working with Cognos Analytics and Planning Analytics in a variety of different ways. And this success story is going to take place with our client, Takeda Pharmaceuticals. So Takeda Pharmaceuticals, by kind of introduction, is a Japanese multinational pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical company. It is the largest pharmaceutical company in Asia and one of the top 20 largest pharmaceutical companies in the world by revenue. And we've had the pleasure of working with these folks over the past few years. And to help us present, we have our very own Mark Karras, Senior Solutions Architect and partner here at PMsquare, who has been leading the effort on this project from a PMsquare standpoint. And then we have S.J. Van Jaarsveld from Takeda, who is our key project sponsor, as well as a consolidation, planning, and reporting lead at Takeda. So welcome, gentlemen. I want to thank you guys both for joining us this morning. I will go ahead and hand things over to you guys to do some introductions of your own before we get started. So, Mark, if you want to get us kicked off, please.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. As Kevin indicated, I'm Mark Karras. I'm a senior consultant and partner at PMsquare, and I've been with the company for close to 7 years, so almost a full-timer since we branched out. And I've been working with Cognos since the ReportNet days, actually even impromptu prior to that. So about 22, 23 years. So, and to help me present, I'm going to turn it over to my Takeda colleague, S.J.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. My name is S.J. Van Jaarsveld. I've been with Takeda for 7 years in the finance, IT, and planning reporting team. And I'm the IT lead for this the CFOinUrpocket solution that we're going to walk you through today. Thank you. So I'll just continue here to give you a brief introduction on Takeda. Kevin, thanks for the words you already said. So as Kevin mentioned, Takeda is a global biopharmaceutical company. We are headquartered in Tokyo, Japan. Some background on an acquisition. In 2019, Takeda acquired Shire Pharmaceuticals, which had previously acquired Baxalta, and Baxalta was a split-off from Baxter's Bioscience division, for those of you that may have worked with Baxter. Our U.S. headquarters is in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and then we have regional offices in Exton, Pennsylvania, as well as in Bannockburn, Illinois. And then we have manufacturing sites, as you can see here on the map, across the world. In the US specifically, 2 of our largest sites are in Los Angeles and in Covington, Georgia. We also have various plasma collection centers around the world. And just a couple notes on the Takeda revenue for 2020 was around 29 billion, and we have roughly 40,000 employees worldwide. So continuing then with some introduction points, here you can see just a few points around Takeda's purpose and vision. Specifically, what I wanted to point out is the values. It's based on what we call a Takedaisms, and it focuses on integrity, fairness, honesty, and perseverance. And then one of the key Takeda imperatives that relates to what we want to show you today on the CFOinUrpocket application is unleashing the power of data and digital. So if we continue, just a couple more slides on introduction. As you can see here, we are a patient-driven, science-first organization. We focused on therapeutic areas of oncology, rare diseases, neuroscience, gastroenterology, plasma-derived therapies, and vaccines. Some of our recognizable therapies that you may know about is Entyvio, Vyvanse, Gammagard, Advate, Velcade, just to mention a few. And then just continuing on this slide, I just wanted to point out that Takeda has an R&D investment of roughly 5 billion a year, and we have a very robust pipeline. Some more information on this slide regarding our business portfolio and the breakdown or the balance between the key business areas as it relates to sales. As you can see, the leaders for us is gastroenterology and rare diseases. So then moving on to what we really want to discuss today is the CFOinUrpocket solution. So I'll give a brief introduction here. The name was trademarked by Takeda. The CFO of Takeda, Kostas Sarukos, came up with this idea in a previous role when he was the CFO of our UK and regional office. And he wanted to have one place where everyone can go for one version of the truth. So it started as a local regional tool in Europe and the tool was built using a technology called Longview on top of IBM Planning Analytics or TM1 cubes. It only started with a handful of reports, mostly like table type reports, a couple of charts as well. And then as we continue, we had the ambition to roll the application out globally. So there was an investigation done with Takeda. We decided upon Cognos Analytics as a technology. And subsequently, we partnered with PMsquare to help us in our rollout that we wanted to take further. One of the main reasons why we selected Cognos Analytics was the integration with planning analytics, with TM1 Cube specifically. And here, the integrated security played a major role for us at Takeda. So the initial release with Cognos Analytics went live in October 2019. It included UCAN, our emerging market area, and our corporate Takeda office. So with Cognos Analytics, we, with this release, we added 10 to 12 newly defined reports. For example, a profit and loss report, revenue, and operating expenses. We also created some dashboards, mainly to be used as templates in the Cognos dashboard application. So with this, we received very positive responses from our user base and from our finance leadership team. And this allowed us to ramp up staffing and started building out a backlog of requirements that we wanted to add to the application.
Guys, we got some questions coming in. I wanted to post one of those here now. There's a question, how did the decision to keep the Longview portion intact come to be? Maybe if you can provide some context there.
Yeah, we didn't initially do away with Longview, the old technology that was used at Takeda. We wanted to have a gradual transition to Cognos Analytics, Kevin, and with an opportunity on the technical side to continue developing a new landing page, for example, and all these additional reports I'm touching on, without disrupting the business too much. So we carefully planned this out.
Makes sense. Okay. Thanks.
I mentioned the dashboard. So what I'm showing here is just a screenshot of this dashboard we rolled out for Global Takeda, specifically focusing here on a nice map, a regional map showing some data, and then we also had a summaries tab on the first tab, some historical trend information, and some brand analysis. So the typical things you would expect to see in a dashboard with Cognos dashboard tool developed. All kinds of tables, graphs, graphical information.
Okay, awesome start, SJ. I'm going to take over for a little bit now, and I'm going to start talking a little bit about what we did in the next phases of the project. So we had phase 2 go live, and then followed that up with phase 3, in which we replaced all the reports that were originally done in Longview with Cognos Analytics, and we developed a new landing page in Cognos as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about the landing page at this point. The idea was to have a good starting point that shows some key performance indicators, and it was decided we would do some of the high-level profit and loss information, as well as the revenue of some of the key business areas. The landing page is showing these KPIs with kind of a conditional formatting type of view, but also can be toggled over to a trend view, so you can see how the progress is going over time. We also added some TM1 security subsets behind the scenes that allow the TM1 developers to assign the user level security for easier use in setting up the defaults in the Cognos Analytics reports. So that was a big advantage for us developing the reports. The landing page has a menu for launching all the reports in the portfolio. It also has an area where you can set your parameters that you're going to use by default when launching those reports. Again, those are set by default using TM1. However, if you decide your next few report executions need to be different than what your defaults or your security allows as a default, you can change those here in the landing page. And it does utilize a responsive design for use on a mobile device. So here's a quick screenshot to show you the landing page. Obviously, a lot of the information is blurred out, but the responsive design is a nice touch here. If we do run this on an iPad or a mobile device and have it in portrait mode, these two sides will actually stack upon one another. So a nice advancement there. We also have a couple other icons at the top that I wanted to point out, and the kind of the greater than arrow, if you select that, basically slides down a little information bar that tells you when the cubes were last updated, and some other key information that might help you understand the data that you're looking at. We did involve one of the other partners at PMsquare, Mike DeGoyce, to kind of give us a head start on the design for this dashboard, as the developers and the team at Takeda were just kind of scratching our heads and how to get that started. And Mike's unique skills in the user experience definitely came into play here. So thanks to Mike for lending his hand there. To continue on phase 3, after the landing page, we did develop a few more dashboards. And probably more importantly, we continue to expand into other business units, such as the US oncology and plasma-derived therapies, which are kind of the less regional but more specialized business units, very important to Takeda. And another important piece of information here is we began utilizing the IBM Cognos for Microsoft Office plugin specifically for PowerPoint, so that we could build out monthly review meeting template presentations in PowerPoint that can be refreshed on a monthly basis with just a couple of clicks of the mouse, rather than compiling those monthly slide by slide. Those were mainly rolled out to the global BPNA team, the UCAN, and the global emerging market teams. I'm hoping we can do a poll question here. I'd like to know, yes or no, how many people out there are using the IBM Cognos for Microsoft Office plugin or its Planning Analytics counterpart, PAX, at your company. I'm hoping the moderator can let me know when it's okay to advance on to the next slide.
Yep, the poll is posted and we can proceed. Thanks, Mark.
Okay. I'm interested to see those results myself. Okay, so continuing on in phase 3, we also developed some more reports, quite a few actually, at Takeda during the planning. Throughout the year, there are multiple sets of phases or cycles within the planning process, and we've started developing specific reports for those individual cycles. And those are actually very important to the business and all the regions and all the business units. We did some performance improvements. We made some adjustments to the cube to help with performance. One of the big things we improved on was the refresh process and the timing involved with that, so that we could give the users more usability time frames and less downtime, and some configuration changes that enabled some other performance improvements. We also set up a new security cube that allowed us to, and I briefly touched on this earlier in the landing page, to assign defaults and security for each individual user for a better user experience. One of my PMsquare colleagues, Hadar Deckel, was also asked to produce something called a reconciliation cockpit. This cockpit is unique in that it's not being used by the business on the financial side, but more behind the scenes to ensure that the data in multiple systems is in sync. And one of the unique things about these reports is that they utilize multiple cubes, which is not necessarily an easy thing to do in Cognos Analytics. One of the other advantages that we gave the users here is the ability to enter comments to discuss why the numbers might be different, why they might be the same, and so on and so forth. So definitely a lot of different things happening in phase 3.
So Mark, I'll take it from here a little bit. So going forward with our journey, the project moved into a more hybrid agile development model, where we are less focused. We were less focused on getting all the requirements defined up front, and instead we are focused on iterations, multiple iterations, so that we can see continuous feedback from our users. And we found this to be working very well for throughout our rollout phases. We did bring new business leadership on board to keep the project momentum going and keep us going in the right direction. Also solidified some lead analyst roles. So these changes brought fresh ideas and visions, and I think it helped us to take CFOinUrpocket to the next level. It also resulted in more streamlined communication between business and the project team. So we also defined predictive forecasting goals. Other kind of goals that we set was like to get us to a best-in-class implementation. And our focus is always on user experience, and kind of like one of our mottos is saving the user clicks and minutes, and without necessarily the need for the user to do any training on how to use the tool. As we went forward, as Mark alluded to before, we added additional development staff, and we continued to develop our support model. And here developers are documenting each report. We're also documenting the behind-the-scenes cube changes that we're making, and then we're doing proper knowledge transfer to the Takeda support team. We continue to work on additional TM1 improvements. For example, adding the ability for individual countries or groups of countries to create their own product hierarchies. This was also very well received by Takeda business. Continue to look at improving our cube refresh and reload times and processes to bring additional stability. We added some additional TM1 cubes as data sources, and of course, then you can develop additional reports using those. Some examples of these is a long-range forecast, what we call a business reporting cube. This mainly allowed us to get visibility into operating expense reporting, where cost center owners can see data at the cost center level, with the ability then to drill down into transactional details using drill-through reports. We also added a very popular, in fact, our most used report, the daily sales report, which gives our users visibility into the performance of sales over products and customers. Again, here I just may mention briefly, thanks to PMsquare and specifically Hadar Deckel, this was a huge undertaking and it's a continuous effort. Further developments included reports that are used to review monthly data and then also budget cycles. Here we send sign-offs via emails on results, and Mark is going to show some of this later in more details. And with all these developments, of course, the user adoption continued to increase at a rapid rate. So as we grew, we realized that we need to get better at source control and improve our deployment. So we did acquire Modio CI, and we're using that now, which was a huge benefit for us. Also, just to touch on, our application is SOX compliant, so introducing Modio CI also provided some additional benefits, for compliance.
Absolutely. So yeah, SJ briefly touched on this earlier with regard to the daily sales report that Hadar wrote. So this was her first undertaking after joining the project, and it is also a unique report in that it does take data from two different cubes. The sales data is pulled out of a sales cube that is typically not used in any of our reports other than daily sales, as it is more detailed daily level data, where we normally use monthly level data for the planning side. And then the planning cube is coming from our typical planning reporting cube. Within the report, the data is then merged from both cubes into tables that can be used in this report. And the report does have a weekly view available, as some business units don't necessarily report or look at the data on a daily basis. They look at it on a more weekly note.
Mark, can you shed some light on what that process looks like using multiple cubes within the same report?
Sure, Kevin. So yeah, there's a couple different ways to do it. We found the most functionally able way was to create a framework manager model. Within that model, you would include each of the cubes you choose to use as a data source, and then basically publish a package that includes both of those data sources. Then individual queries are written for each cube, and then those are merged together either using a union query or a join query, depending on the implementation and the requirements. Either one, I think, would be capable of providing you with that marriage, if you will, of the two. It does help to have similar dimensional information in the two cubes. As Hadar found out, there were some differences, and that was quite the challenge that she overcame to deliver an excellent report. As SJ mentioned, the single most popular report in the portfolio.
Got it. All right, thanks.
A couple other popular reports that I'd like to touch on for various reasons. The first one is called the Country Performance Report. And this is a fairly typical report in our set of reports that is utilizing multi-tabs. So that's a built-in Cognos functionality. If you have multiple pages, you can view those as tabs in Cognos Analytics. And in this particular report, we're highlighting at the beginning of the report some revenue data. We're summarizing it. We're showing more detail, and we're looking at it visually as well as in tables, looking at the data. And we also have some P&L information and some operating expense information. This report was originally developed for Canada at the request of one of our former CFOinUrpocket colleagues that moved there. But it was so well received that it was decided that we would turn it into a report that could be used by any country, region, what have you. So it was well received, and we transformed it into something that would be usable by the entire organization.
Mark, if I could just jump in briefly, I think just to add to this point of Canada, I think what's worked well for us is if we identify like a set of users in a country to use as a pilot, and then we roll out a solution for them, making sure it works well for them, and then they of course tell their colleagues or they share things in the monthly review meetings. and that's how it starts to snowball. Just wanted to throw that comment in there.
That's a great point, SJ. And to that point, I can remember at least 4 or 5 of these types of scenarios. This probably being the first one, and it was really kind of by accident, but because this one went so well in that manner, we kind of made that a model that we're now using as part of that hybrid Agile approach that SJ had mentioned earlier. So yeah, here's a couple screenshots from that specific report, so you can kind of get a flavor of the content of some of the more typical CFOinUrpocket reports. So you can see at the top we have some KPI information that is blurred out, so probably doesn't make much sense. Followed by what we call at Takeda tornado charts, or if you're from Europe, tornado. And then we have some waterfalls that are used in a good portion of the reports because of the nature of what kind of information it delivers in a visual manner.
So if I continue here with some popular reports in CFOinUrpocket, some other reports that we recently released that received a lot of attention from our business users is a master P&L report. This shows off by showing you your full P&L, your profit and loss statement. And then you have the ability to drill down into your P&L, specifically to your cost center level details. From there on, you can then go further and draw through to your transaction details. So as mentioned earlier, the application was initiated by our CFO, Costa. So we frequently receive special requests directly from the CFO office. It's a good thing, but also a lot of pressure sometimes. One such case was a revenue by key business area report, and the team developed here a very nice looking report that blends tabular and graphical views of the data. And maybe just the last one to mention, we recently introduced also a cost center reporting solution, which we touched on this before, but it gives cost center owners visibility into their plan and actual spend, as well as their FTE data through a dashboard. They can then drill into additional details, again, down to transaction details as well. Here I want to touch on, this was the first report where we introduced IBM's carbon design principles. We were scratching our head a little bit again, as Mark mentioned before, as developers, we're not always designers, right? So many thanks here to Mike de Goyes from PMsquare that stepped in and advised us and really helped us with the design and come up with which I think a great looking report, which is the one here shown on the slides. It's a screenshot of it. Just touching a little bit on what you see here. There's some actual to plan variances, kind of like there in the top left on the bars. I can see some trending. There's spend breakdown, and then throughout the report, there's the ability to hover over certain areas and get additional data like pop-outs, window pop-outs, and draw options as well. I think there's one more slide coming. Yeah, there it is, sorry. So yeah, as you can see here, there was a hover action over some of the variances, and quickly that darker color pop-up window showed up to show me additional details.
And I'll just add that if you look in the upper right-hand corner of each kind of pane of this dashboard, you'll see some icons. So what the idea behind this dashboard was in part of the carbon design and Mike's design was to not clutter it up, but have that information available with a single mouse click. So we could pop up a table. The 3 dots will allow you to drill through to a more detailed report, less visual. So a lot of information going on here is available, but we're not cluttering up the screen with all of that, even though the user may need that information. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of transition to some of the key pieces of information or components that provided some of the success of CFOinUrpocket. And you know, it doesn't just build itself. We had to do a lot of design, implementation, thinking, trial and error, and whatnot. But ultimately, what we came up with has been well received and is continuing to receive popularity within Takeda, and the user base is growing. So these are some of the higher level items I wanted to touch on here. As mentioned and shown earlier, we're utilizing multi-tab reports. We are utilizing what we call an object library, and that's a kind of a central hub, if you will, for styling, for layout component references to make sure every report looks similar and acts similar. And we are in the process of transitioning to a more IBM Carbon design principle setup there. We're not quite there yet. We do have a template that allows a user to create a new report utilizing that object library by default and some of the key components of it. Although I would say we're probably at this point, since we're so far in the game, that we're probably taking an existing report, cloning it, and making it look like a new report. I'm pretty sure everybody on this call that develops reports has done that before. Probably one of the biggest things we learned early about this project was that Takeda in the business wanted the prompts to be inline, meaning on the report itself. So we don't necessarily have a prompt page on any reports that are viewed interactively, but the prompts are going to show up on the report and allow the user to change from the default selections to change how the report data is driven. Continuing on, I would say the most common objects are crosstabs and charts, as those play the nicest with dimensional data sources. So I would say 95% of the reports are containing both of those, or one or the other. We did use the legacy charts for the sheer purpose that they are most flexible for what we needed. There are a few instances where we are using the Cognos 11 visualizations, but I would say right now the most common charts that we are using are the legacy charts, the bars and the columns and the waterfalls. We do have master details in many places, especially where we're providing a variable number of graphics to go along with some textual data. So that is coming in really handy there as well. And obviously, we are utilizing the other objects that Cognos avails to us, the lists, repeaters, and whatnot. Finally, we are leveraging a beautiful addition to Cognos Analytics since the Cognos 10 days, and those are custom controls, specifically JavaScript. And the idea here was to allow us to strive towards our goal of reaching a best-in-class solutions. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about these custom controls next here, and these are really remarkable and have really increased the usability and user experience. We're obviously using JavaScript, as mentioned, to enhance the experience. And as you can see here, Cognos Paul's fingerprints are all over CFOinUrpocket. He is a colleague on the project, and it's evident when we look at these improvements that we've made using custom controls. Probably one of the bigger applications of custom controls is to write prompts that are used throughout the project. At this point, we are only using native out-of-the-box prompts in the reports that are underlying for those PowerPoint presentations that are developed using the Microsoft Office plugin. Every other report that is consumed online is using a custom control in every prompt that you see. We have a searchable tree prompt, searchable combo box, toggle buttons, a sliding more prompts area that allows us to hide some lesser changed or lesser used prompt controls. And then the fact that all these prompts are toggleable between auto submit and not. So if a user desires to change 4 different prompts, they don't have to run the report 4 separate times. They can make a simple click and then change their 4 prompts and rerun the report. So what I thought I'd do then is just kind of give you an active look at how these custom prompts work. I will point out before I do that along with Paul Mendelson, Cognos Paul, another colleague from PMsquare that was on the project at the time, Rory Cornelius, made these contributions that are incredible in my opinion, as I'm not a JavaScript coder whatsoever. And what they were able to do with this tool is amazing. So the first thing I'm going to run here is a searchable tree prompt. So if you check the screen here, you'll see kind of how it operates. You can type in and get directly to a node, which I've done here. And then you can click it and the report will allow you to rerun. The second one is a searchable combo box. You can type in to get there quickly, or you can just simply scroll like you would on an existing combo box. And that's native to Cognos. Pretty cool toggle buttons. This is a single prompt control that is set up to display multiple buttons. As you click them, they obviously change color. Dark indicates selected and white is not selected. And finally, that more filters transition that allows us to hide some of the lesser used prompt controls. We kind of stole that idea from Amazon and a lot of other websites out there that are pretty popular that don't show you everything that's available to you, but allow you to see these things.
So one question there, Mark, about that. Can you shed some light on why standard Cognos prompts weren't used and the decision came to use custom controls instead?
I'll take that one, Mark. So the out-of-the-box prompts didn't meet all the requirements, Kevin, that we had from business. They didn't give us necessarily all the flexibility that we wanted. So that's why we went with the custom controls and what we jokingly call Paul's magic in the project. This gives us reusability. It gives us an advantage and overall how we're managing things. And we've touched on this best-in-class saving clicks and minutes topics now a few times, and this just helps us to get there. We are cautious, of course. We manage this carefully. We document, Paul solutions. We're doing detailed knowledge transfer with the support team. And by the way, we are busy now with an upgrade project to Cognos 11.2. And during the upgrade project, we follow test scripts to make sure that all the JavaScript is still working as we expect. And so far, so good. No issues for us.
So I want to add to SJ's answer in that both SJ and I are old school. We come from the let's not use these fancy customizations because of the risk involved. And he and I were pretty steadfast with that partnership until some of the new leadership that was mentioned was brought on that kind of demanded we take it to the next level. So we were outvoted, and hence what we got. I'm pretty happy we got outvoted, actually. So it is an unbelievable enhancement that was made to decide to go down that path.
Agreed, 100%. Yeah,
they look great. All right, thanks.
So I'll just add a few more notes regarding the custom controls. Some additional controls that was developed, again, like thanks to Paul, that ties with our vision of this best-in-class user experience, is the expand and collapse. Mark is going to show some examples shortly, but it really gives our users the ability to instantly drill down. This was really huge for us. It was very well received. Recently, we rolled out some freeze pane features for freezing column headers and row headers and crosstabs. Again, huge, as you'll see when Mark shows it. And another big thing is a PowerPoint generator that Paul developed. So Takeda is, fortunately or unfortunately, is a big PowerPoint user. A lot of slides being produced for review meetings and things like this. So this was another big deal for us. I should mention we did remove interactivity on our reports in Cognos Analytics, the standard interactivity. So it's not being applied to cross-tab lists and graphs. And this kind of is also adding to the simplified user experience that I keep on touching.
Yeah, just to add a little bit on the remove interactivity, we were trying to utilize out-of-box Cognos functionality. So with 11.1 and 11 and higher, we had the ability to navigate within a crosstab or a list or whatever through the hierarchy, and that's how we initially built reports. But the user base was not finding that to be very intuitive. So Cognos Paul was able to come up with a way to eliminate that interactivity, but at the same time, we had to kind of add something in that allowed us to get back that interactivity that we just lost. And the expand collapse was vital for that. So I'd say out of all the custom controls, that one's probably had the most impact, earliest, I should say, in the project. Obviously followed soon after that by the prompts that he and Rory developed. So yeah, as SJ alluded, I will run a couple little videos here to show you what these custom controls are doing. So the first one is the freeze pane. So exactly as its name implies, like it does in Excel, you can keep those identifiers showing on the column and row edges. Something we would like to think Cognos would eventually put in their product, but for the time being, we're doing it with some custom controls, and it works quite nicely. And then the aforementioned expand collapse. So if you recall in Cognos Analytics, if I wanted to drill down there, I would use the navigation. I would click on a cell. I would say expand member. It would then expand that member out. So we're basically replicating that capability. We're not having to rerun the report either, so some huge advantages there. I will say that the expand collapse, because we are exposing a great amount of cells and rows of data, it does add to the runtime of the report. Although insignificantly, it should be noted that there is a very slight performance hit. The next couple custom controls that I want to touch on, we mentioned earlier the ability to send a sign-off email. This is again done via a custom control. There's also a little comment section there that allows the user to type in a comment about why they're signing off or something to that nature. So I'll just go ahead and run that. And you'll see that the user can type a comment in, send the email. It gives you a little summary to review before you click send, and then you go ahead and click send. What I've not seen in the video is there is a little toaster pop-up message that says your email was sent successfully, or I suppose unsuccessfully. The second one on this page is referred to as the block switcher. So where we have the Cognos native page tabs, if you will, this is another way to introduce tabs in line within the report. So while we might have multiple pages that produce tabs, we can also have multiple tabs within a page. So what I'm going to display here is a product prompt that allows multiple products to be entered. And then we will see an entry in tab format, if you will, for each of those entered products. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. So I'm going to make a couple selections here. Click rerun, and then now you notice for each selection I made, we have a tab. And those tabs contain the same object, just with the data that's appropriate for that specific selection. Very cool. And the main idea behind that block switcher is utilized or leveraged in the PowerPoint generator. So this was a huge addition that was made, as SG alluded, that the Takeda business teams utilize PowerPoint all over the place in their monthly reporting, or even outside of monthly reporting. So what Paul developed is nothing short of a miracle. utilizing Block Switcher, you can click this icon and get a page, or a slide, I should say, for each and every block that has been defined here. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. We click the button, it says the PowerPoint is running. It creates the PowerPoint, and there it is, 4 tabs: the overall, GI, rare diseases, and oncology. So pretty amazing stuff that Paul developed there. There's quite a bit of configuration that goes on behind the scenes. Obviously, it can't be just, hey, put an icon on a report and you can make a PowerPoint off of it. But nonetheless, it is relatively easy to use and configure, and ultimately a vital component to CFOinUrpocket for Takeda.
Okay, so I think that takes us to the end of the technical discussions that Mark was having, and I wanted to summarize the key elements to the successes that we've had in CFOinUrpocket. First and foremost, we had and still have a very firm commitment from the CFO and from our finance leadership team. And we are very fortunate here to have strong business sponsorship. So we have the vision and the drive that's necessary from leaders in IT that's responsible for this project. And then just as important, we have a very talented and highly motivated team of planning analytics and Cognos analytics developers. And here, of course, as mentioned before, we chose to partner with PMsquare, and it really helped us with our successful rollouts. We have a solid and a consistent infrastructure behind everything. Again, lucky to have on our team directly an architect as well as a Tier 1 developer. And then we do strive to have a very collaborative and a creativity-friendly environment that people will feel free to come with ideas and challenge things, challenge the status quo, and so on. And lastly, just there's a willingness to invest in our success, to spend the money to get the appropriate level of talent, as well as the tools I mentioned, Modio CI, so whatever tools we need to be successful.